Someone must have told Anna. And she called and said, would you ever consider coming back to Vogue? You'll have a column. You can write long pieces. You don't have to come into the office if you don't want to,
Right.
but you're more than welcome to get a desk here. And I said, Anna, are you looking out your window? Do you see me with my legs dangling out my window here sometimes? Send the barge if it can get across Times Square. And then she said, I know this is a tough time for you, Billy. When is your birthday? I said, it's July 18th. And she said, I'm going to give you your birthday party. I was blown away. I was really depressed as a result of this particular year. And that's when
Yeah.
I had to start doing my grief work. In my mind, my hero was Anna Wintour. She walked on water in high heels. I thought, oh, fuck.
She's
I
throwing
can't.
me a party.
She's throwing me a party.
This is Going Rogue, and I'm Jill Demling. Welcome back to part 2 with Billy Norwich. In our first conversation, we explored Billy's early years, the orphan who became New York's most compassionate chronicler. Now we dive deeper into the relationships that shaped him and the wisdom he's gathered along the way. From his mentor, Anna Wintour, teaching him to edit your life, to the society women who became surrogate mothers, Billy learned that fashion isn't just about clothes. It's intervention, it's medicine, it's hope made visible. He spent decades mastering the art of seeing people clearly while choosing kindness over cruelty. His novels channel the voices of those who taught him grace, and his philosophy remains beautifully simple. When you've lost everything, you can choose gratitude or you can choose bitterness. Today, we learn how stories can become sanctuary. Let's continue the conversation as Billy Norwich goes rogue. Hi, Billy.
Hi, Jill.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Our marathon conversation continues. This is part 2 of Billy Norwich. Here is Your Life, my favorite Sesame Street show intro. And here is your Life host, Jill
Oh,
Demling.
my
So
God.
let's jump in where we left off. We were talking about Liz. We discussed the name change. So I just want to talk a little bit about gossip and the gossip column. Back then, you told us a little bit, but let's just give the dates again. So from 1985 until 91, you wrote for the Daily Around the Town column,
It was
right?
called William Norwich.
William Norwich for New York Daily News.
Hmm.
Then 91 through 93, your daily column appeared in the Post.
That's right.
Okay.
Again, William Norwich. A page six historian was furious when it appeared in the New York Times that I was the editor of the page six because she had been. So
Oh,
I just
got
wanted
it.
to put that out there that
Got
think,
it.
oh, I read the Post and weren't you page six? No, no.
Right. Okay. And then I found an article about Nina Griscom from 2019. So I think this is when she got ill. I
Hmm.
think this article is about it. When speaking about her, you are quoted as saying, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is what you say about magazines. Along the way, hers became a regular bold-faced name in the tabloids and flourishing glossies. It was a much smaller world when Nina was starting out with fewer images and outlets, Mr. Norwich said. In those days, there was Susie, Liz Smith, Women's Wear Daily, Bill Cunningham, and I to deliver the messages that thousands of influencers are delivering now. So, before we talk about your work specifically as a gossip columnist during those years, how has the world changed? Because I just feel like it was a more respectable place. It was more journalistic
Hmm.
than when you think of gossip rags and what gossip is, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then with that, you spent 6 years at the Daily News writing society columns. You said you were embarrassed to introduce yourself until managing editor Jim Wilsey told you, but why? You and
Mike Lupica.
both cover teams. You mentioned teams. You
Yes.
mapped those teams, the oldest guard,
Hmm.
the Nouvelle Society set, the fashion flock.
Yeah.
You coined Cash Hamptons. You could spot every nuance, but protected your subjects. So when you were covering society, you were studying it or searching for it
Hmm.
because society means intimate,
Yes.
gathering. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's interesting because society, the deeper meaning,
Hmm.
is very much what you would yearn to have this
Right.
intimate relationships,
Community. Yep.
community. How did the orphan who'd lost everything decide to compose rather than expose? And then there's a little Truman Capote thing I've put together after this because he obviously the opposite of you. So gossip columns then.
Hmm.
You're embarrassed, but it is journalism then. It's not what it is now. So just give us a little lesson.
Yeah. Um, and just one last sentence about
Yeah.
the name
Yes.
change, which was, Billy Goldberg's life was a really, really sad thing. And it was a mystery to me. I had no analysis of it. But William Norwich would be a happier time. So
Right.
with that happier time, and forgetting the wonderful expressions, the penalties of enforced frivolity, I I really loved, now this may sound pretentious, I was at boarding school, the head of the drama society. Outside his office, anyone who wanted to subscribe to the New York Times could pay for a New York Times and take it with them before school meeting and before lunch, read it wherever. And on top of it, he had one copy of the Daily News, which I recognized from eating it with my mother at friend meetings.
Right.
And I said, "May I read it? May I read it?" He said, "What are you reading?" And I said, "Susie Says." And he very kindly said, "You like how?" I said, "She's such a good writer. She has all these amazing expressions. She makes me laugh." I love to laugh. And he said, "Well, there's really a body of literature. And I think you should read some of these writers. It goes all the way back to the playwright Sheridan, The Rivals, where he had a character called Mrs. Malaprop, hysterical, and it was in the 17th century. And he went Nancy Mitford, Ronald Furbank, Evelyn. Who else would have been on his list? E.F. Benson, a British writer. My life at that point became reading those books,
Mm.
as well as, when I read Catch 22. Um, and that's what I mean, the pretension. I thought,
Yeah.
this writing is incredible. This writing is really good. I remember saying to Swifty Lazar one day in an elevator, I had a lot of intimate conversation with people in elevators, including once with Cy Newhouse. I said, I heard a rumor that you're getting Mrs. Maley to write her memoir. And he said, she's one of the fucking best writers I know, but she's not going to write a memoir. So that honored
Yeah.
the genre.
Yes.
And when I got hired at the Daily News, I was lucky enough to have known a man named John Duca, who was the fashion writer of the New York Times, quite a character and quite a wonderful, wonderful writer. And he was married to Keisha Keeble, one of the
Right.
founders of KCD. And John, he had left the Times. And I literally was at the Daily News having got a copy of headlines and deadlines. I start in a week or something like that. It was really a quick start around Thanksgiving time of 1985. And so I went to a payphone and called John. And I told him I have him. He said, "No shit, you better come over here." So I went over to what was then KCD, an apartment on 7th Avenue and 55th Street, maybe. And Keisha was there. I loved Keisha. And John was just a hero to me because he wrote as well as Charlotte Curtis, who was my real hero, and who would also write me a letter after the Women's Wear article saying, "Honey," she said, "it's a merry-go-round, New York, and you have just got the gold ring. I wish you the very best." Um,
Wow.
there's a lot of that in those days.
Yeah.
Wrote letters, like Barbara Streisand. And the real ladies and gentlemen, if you wrote something about them, nice, whether it was in those days in the column or later at Vogue,
Yeah.
the real stars wrote you a note. Now, they didn't say, "Call me Barbara," necessarily.
Right.
Wrote a note of thank you. Julia
Yeah.
Roberts would write a note. And I noticed the deuxième, the bees, who stayed bees, never thanked you, never did
Oh,
it.
yeah. I have a box of all the thank you notes. Remember my wall of fame?
Yeah.
Yeah. I still have all of them.
But notice who they came from.
Yeah.
People who are still working.
Yep.
Because
It's true.
the reporter, I knew my place. I never didn't want to go. I wanted to go to dinner with Patrick.
Right.
journalist.
Yep.
When I got friendly with Anna, I wanted to go to her house and
Yep.
watch her raise her kids. And she nailed me on that. She said, "You really just want to stay home." So it was different things.
Yep.
But there were amazing characters who would turn up. I mean, because we did cover, I mean, because there was another woman named Dinah Prince, and she didn't love it. But we really started out as Uptown, Downtown. It was, if my memory, a matter of months, and she didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And it became William Norwich.
Yeah.
One night I'd be in a crowd with Diane Brill and Michael Musto downtown at the opening of some club,
Yeah.
MK or area or whatever. And then the next night I would be at a dinner with Pat Buckley. But they were such vivid
Yeah.
characters to me. And no one was attended, no one had bodyguards. So you really had to, if you wanted to last, you had to be respectful. You had to appreciate what they were about. Sometimes I thought some of these people would prefer to talk to me than their best friends. But believe me, if I wrote something nasty or triggering, they always circled the wagon.
So gossip wasn't why, I mean, it has a negative connotation when you're gossiping, but
Well, I
this
think
was just what they're up to. You're
that's right.
getting in the room.
And I
Yeah.
had to. If I wrote that there was marital trouble, I had to call.
Well, look what happened when you said someone was short.
Exactly. Well, that was another discovery. I recently had a friend who was promoted in her world, and I wrote to her abstractions of things that were said to me then.
Yeah.
There was a man, a PR guy named Jimmy Mitchell, and he was a friend of Liz, and he called me up. Now, let me tell you how wonderful Liz was. She let me, before I started, go to her office and copy name by name her Rolodex. It took me 2 days,
Wow.
right?
That is unheard of.
Uh-huh. That's right. I still have it in storage.
Wow.
2 Rolodexes. So I had a lot of help.
Yeah.
Dominic Dunn was a huge help to me and a bit of a, gave me some, not such great advice, but I did everything he told me to do. He would call me on the phone. People would call on the phone um, and tell you things. But Jimmy Mitchell said, listen, and they all have voices. He said, let me tell you something, Jimmy. Whatever you do, and I forgot this with Henry Kravis, he said, don't describe their physicality. He said, let me tell you a story. If you're lucky, you're going to meet a woman named Brownie McLean. She's a fabulous woman. She's a great person to write about, real characters. But all you're going to see is the fact that she outlines her eyes in coal. She said, so let me tell you, if your tendency is to then go write about the muskrat-eyed Brownie McLean, let me tell you, you miss the story. And you'll make an
Wow.
enemy for life. Diana Vreeland called me up when I started the column very early on. I'd gone to boarding school with one of her grandsons. She called me up and said, Mr. Norwich, I can't do a Diana Vreeland voice.
Yeah, yeah.
Norwich, this is Diana Vreeland. Yes. Oh my God, Mrs. Vreeland, terrified, terrified.
Yeah.
And she said, very happy for you, Mr. Norwich. She said, well, let me give you some advice. She said, everyone's going to tell you their story, and hopefully you'll listen very politely. But then the whole time you're listening, wonder what is their real story and see if you can ask, and you'll do very well. I was telling you about going to John Duca. And so I went to John Duca, and Keisha, her eyes lit up because, I mean, there were 1.7 million readers at the Daily News in those days. Plus, my column very quickly was syndicated to 90 newspapers across the country. This is
Wow.
pre-internet, for which I got some extra money.
Yeah.
I have never been paid. I've never earned more than $200,000 in a year from any job I ever had. And that was shortly, very short. I mean, I was comfortable and things were
Yeah.
expensive. I didn't have an expense account at the Daily News. I had to cover my own expenses.
Wow.
Um, and
And you have to keep up with the Joneses there. I
you
mean,
do have to, I mean,
yeah.
someone gave me a pointer that my sort of post-hippie Dunhill look was not working. And I better just go get a good suit and stuff like that.
That's
And I mean,
funny.
I took editorial discounts. That much I did do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got 30% off so I could shop. So I went to John Duke, and Keisha's eyes lit up because every client of hers, they had a lot of really important clients.
Yeah.
Look where she could place them. She would barely have to make a
Right.
phone call.
Right.
And
And she'd trust you too.
John sat back and he listened. I told him how I got the job, and John Fairchild and the iPage. And he was so beyond all that.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, I don't think you're going to be able to compete with these women. So I don't think you'll ever be able to scoop Liz or Susie, particularly, since I was the new Susie. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you'll ever said no one's going to call you for a long time with the news when they're divorcing or something, because the divorce was always your big scoop. And you would get divorced in those days, and you would call Susie, and it was announced, and that was it. You never talked about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Interesting.
you were in the paper when you were born, you were in the paper when you married, and for
Yeah.
some people when you divorced and remarried. So I was like, you don't think I can? He said, no, but I know you love to write. So let me give you some advice. If every day in those column you can produce one good sentence, you'll do fine. So I tried to
Interesting.
focus on some humor
Yeah.
and alliterations and
Yeah.
fun. And that's what I tried to do. Now, in terms of the relationship with the people, I was gobsmacked. It wasn't the glamour, like superficial. Eventually I would meet Kim Kardashian. And I was amazed how beautiful she is in person. And I forgave her all sorts of things. Plus, in history, she's changed the shape of what women can look like.
Yeah. It's true.
You don't have to be, you can look like Kim
Yeah. I
Kardashian.
mean, our cover did that, and Kanye.
Yeah,
Who knows if he hadn't been part of it, what would have happened, to be honest, because that's what got her in Vogue. So it's
right,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's how I met her under the Met parties.
Yeah.
I just went up because they were like standing there once they got
Yeah.
outside and they had nothing to do. So I thought I was covering, I used to write all those
Yeah.
parties.
Yeah.
And I went up and introduced myself. I was hoping to get a quote. I don't think I did. He was so hostile. Like, don't talk to us. Bodyguard, bodyguard, where's the bodyguard? But she was lovely.
Yeah.
So I'm endeared to her. And then I
Yeah.
see the difference she made, if only because of changing what we view as,
Right.
I think it's important in today's
Yeah.
visual world to be
No,
able,
I remember the phone call sitting in Grace's office, and it was me and Grace on the phone with Kim and Kanye and Annie Leibovitz from her office. And it was mostly Kanye talking, but he was saying Kim is photographed 365 days a year. Actresses, it's maybe award ceremonies and a few premieres. She needs to be dressed. She's Marilyn Monroe, basically, he was referencing. And
Mhm.
she was like, oh my God. But he goes, let me finish. And he was adamant that these designers start making clothes that she can wear because she needs to buy clothes and she wears them every single day.
I didn't know that at the time. I must have been trying not to have anyone see me eating at my desk when,
Oh, he had the ability to call the designers. She didn't prior. So that's where his
right.
influence at that time
Yeah.
pushed that needle at least forward.
Yeah.
So that was
Um,
interesting.
so those were the things that kind of the advice I got on how to approach the writing. Also, in those days, I keep saying in those days, but I just think the distinction is important.
No, it really
In
is.
any regard in life, to know what we've accomplished, if you it is indeed fact an accomplishment, that now they hadn't invented word perfect then. I remember one day driving in a car with Liz up in Connecticut, and she said, honey, why do you think everyone hates writers? I said, well, Lizzie, because they invented word perfect and everyone's a writer now, like everyone's a photographer. And I said, so they just think if you and I would die, people would have more opportunity.
Right, right.
There was something else that you had to do. You could burn out so quickly, and you can burn out so quickly in life that you have to develop relationships. You have to develop trust. I wanted to do that.
Right,
All these people, the grown-ups particularly, were in loco parentis for me. In replace of parents, I had
right.
the divine Mrs. Buckley,
Of course.
the eccentric aunt, the this one, the that one. Blaine Trump blew my mind when she was at somewhere in the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and she heard someone say, "We don't have to worry about that. Our hairdressers have to worry about that." She literally heard someone say that,
Oh my God.
and almost coincidentally, she gets a phone call from this far-flung, God-forsaken thing called God's Love We Deliver, and she goes and gets the money for it and builds it up. The
Right.
people were doing that. Now, I know by the same token, you can make fun of people. Oh, they just do that to wash their money. Well, I didn't feel that way. I think philanthropy takes a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot out of you. and including all the cynics who were sitting in their armchairs eating bonbons, going, "Oh, look at Blaine Trump trying to." Well, no, she raised awareness.
You almost had to, don't you think? It was a status in itself, right?
Well,
Like
that's
Brooke
right.
Astor, or,
Well,
these people
noblesse
that,
oblige. That's what you did.
yeah,
You made
exactly.
in those days you made your first 100,000, and you had to give back because it was
Yes.
in your tradition. I know there are tax advantages to what you're doing.
Right.
It's time
Yeah.
consuming. You're putting your name out there,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
something other than taking over another
Right.
company. Even Donald Trump in those days, who was a real character, real Damon Runyon character,
Yeah.
and people didn't really know what to think of him. I mean,
Right.
what he was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have called me a couple of times and through his voice and tell me that Donald Trump's dating Madonna. That's the first thing he used
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Finally, I figured it out. I said, Donald, stop it. No,
That's
but,
so
but
funny.
he supported Blaine's God's Love We Deliver. So, all of these people who we are grappling with now,
Yeah.
everyone's start was different. I mean, maybe they were the same. I don't know. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. So when approached it, I could not write in the first person. Liz couldn't write in the first person. It was a rite of passage as a journalist to write in the first person. That's why I started the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone's writing in the first person and they tell a story and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we care deeply. But I remember as a result of not being allowed to write in the first person, I didn't really have the need to write in the first person.
Right.
A publication came along called Outweek. And Outweek had a column by a fellow. And what they would do is they would take a picture of somebody who they thought was in the closet, who was in a position to come out to be more publicly gay,
Yeah.
and therefore they were horrible people. And because of our people in the public eye who were in the closet, by their definition of in the closet, um, I had already had my lavender sweater experience.
Exactly.
We were a hindrance to a consciousness in support of, because there was a disease that was killing all gay people.
Right.
So I remember one day I resisted getting a fax machine, and before everything else, there was a fax machine. And you mentioned Nina Griscom earlier, a consortium of women, including Peggy Siegel, Nina Griscom, and Patty Davis Rains, bought me a fax machine and it arrived one day. So, oh, now I'm getting faxes. So I get
Yeah.
faxes and phone calls. My landlord hated me because at messengers all the time and it
Yeah.
was nonstop. It was like being stung by bees. And added to that, I would pick up the phone and say, "You fucking shithead. I have AIDS and I'm dying because of you." And they'd hang up. And I didn't know what was going on. And so I called Liz, and her assistant was named St. Clair Pugh. And I said, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Oh, there's a new magazine. It's weekly called Outweek. And they have a feature every week called Dial a Shithead." Because my phone number was a full page. It said, "Dial this shithead." And it had my number. And,
What?
and it went on and on. And I got the magazine, had to go downtown to get it, but I got the magazine and I read it. And it was really centered around the fact that I was chronicling a lot of, see, then I was lucky because Mrs. Maley, bless her heart, she's getting a little older. So she didn't always go on Mr. Forbes's boat when he was always entertaining on the boat, the Highlander it was called. So I started making new friends when she couldn't show
Yeah.
up. My life was about, if she couldn't get there, I got there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was writing about Malcolm Forbes, and he was infatuated with Elizabeth Taylor. This is a man who was the father of how many kids? 6 kids, married, and apparently he was gay. Now, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no evidence of him being gay. I had never even heard the rumor. Nonetheless, I still would have wrote about him and Elizabeth Taylor because it was a hoot.
Yeah.
But that was my main crime. And I remember reading it, and I remember thinking, why didn't you call me? Like if I were at the Daily News, I would have had to call you and
Yeah.
waited 24 hours for you to get back to me. Um, and there was that. So I could have told you, yes, I am gay. I didn't know Malcolm Forbes is gay. Can you tell me more about that?
Right.
And then I would have said, but unfortunately, I can't write about that. I mean,
No,
see it
then you'd be
because,
outing him.
well, yes, and also because I wasn't allowed to write in the first person. First time I was allowed to write in the
Right.
first person about my experience, with all due respect to celebrity profiles, very often you'll notice, or maybe it's changed now. Um, it begins with the writer talking about Jack Nicholson hates the press. And I was so nervous because he hates the press. And so I got to Jack Nicholson's house,
Oh
and
yeah, Jonathan is in his pieces more than the celebrities. Yeah.
everyone writes that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
if you're not allowed to do the first person, you have to go deeper on a subject.
Right.
It's really a convenient way of starting a piece because if I don't know how to start something now that I can write in the first person,
Right.
me,
Right.
and then I warm my relationship to the subject that I've been assigned or chosen.
R-
So I didn't get to do that until I was at the New York Post, so about year seven of my thing, and I was wanted to tell you the story at some point. So here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I'm not good with dates, but the Republican convention had just happened. George Bush Sr. ran against, oh, everyone just never buy a book I write because listen to this stupidity, but blame it on age. Who ran against who?
Big George.
Big George.
Is
Who?
that Dukakis?
Maybe.
Oh, Mike Dukakis.
Okay.
88. Yep,
This,
that was Quayle and George against Dukakis.
then that's
And
who it was.
that's who when he won. And then he
He
would have
lost.
lost to Clinton. Yeah.
Okay. So it was Dukakis. And we had just seen that summer the Republican
Yeah.
convention, and it was really shocking. Um, it was the beginning of what you might call Project 2025, with a faction of the Republican Party and how separate these parties are and willing to remain separate. In those days, it was very uh, anti-choice, very kind of anti-women, definitely homophobic, and certainly racist. And it was appalling what some of the people at the Republican convention were happy to say about minority groups. So there was a lunch for Mrs. Bush and at L'Orangerie, which is an annex of Le Cirque. And I guess because I was still writing the gossip column, I had been asked. But when it was revealed, I guess I told Anna, she said, well, I'm going with Cy. We can all go in the car together. Um, so we went to this lunch at Le Cirque. It was all the editors in chief and the owners of the companies. And then after, nice polite lunch at Le Cirque, um, it was proposed that every table, maybe there were six or seven tables, pick someone to ask a question of Mrs. Bush. And I don't know if this is relevant, but I think it's all Johnny Versace's fault. Johnny Versace had sent me, or his people had sent me, a red necktie. And so I thought, well, if I wear red, people will notice me.
Yeah.
I didn't know I would be asking a question.
Right.
So we talked and we came up with this question that I would ask, which was Mrs. Bush, and I can't remember verbatim, but Mrs. Bush, in light of the recent Republican convention, which alienated, uh, I don't think I said Jews, which alienated women and gays, how do you think for the Republicans going forward that they can reconvene those groups? I was Mr. PC in those days,
Yeah.
and I still am, I hope. Um, so I stood up and nervously asked the question, all eyes on me, the first one to ask. And I thought, because I'm so PC, I should really be more forthcoming and say, and Mrs. Bush, as two of those three groups, in which she, who had the best sense of humor, and I did not take any offense at this question, said, and which two might those be? And I said, well, actually, Mrs. Bush, all three on a Saturday night. And she laughed, and I laughed, and no one else laughed. They were scared because where was this going?
Right.
And,
Right. Yeah,
and,
on either
and she
side.
said,
Where's it going on her side
right,
too?
after she and I had our laugh,
Yeah.
she said, look, you're in the media. You misinterpreted what it was, blah, 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 blah. And I said, but
Yeah.
Mrs. Bush, I watched it on C-SPAN. It was live. And she said, well, I mean, they'd still, defending, like, no, no, you didn't see what you're seeing. And
Yeah.
full of Republican stuff,
Yep. Yep.
actually Democrats.
That's what we see all the time right now, though. Yep.
And Anna pulled my suit jacket and said, okay, sit down. And I sat down. That went around. It became like a Newsweek story, the conversation.
Yeah.
And the New York Post wanted me to write about it. And I said, well, how am I going to write about it? It happened to me. And they said, you have permission to write in the first person. First
Interest.
time I wrote in the first person. So in 1988, I didn't then write in the first person the next day because it was a dispensation for a day
Right.
because the story concerned me and they want me to write about the story.
That is so crazy.
So in terms of you ask about what was it
Yeah.
then, and I guess I'm really lucky, and probably the people I wrote about are lucky that I understood it was a real privilege to be privy and to be a channeler for these characters to another. I mean, I remember the day, I'm really reminiscing here, but nostalgia is my drug.
Yeah.
Um, uh, got a phone call from Lois Smith, the
Of course.
PR lady, Holly,
Yeah.
and she said, "Honey, everyone's writing all this crap about Cher and her plastic surgery. Can I put you on the phone with Cher?" She said, "I'll send you a fax of all the things she's supposedly done, and she'll go through that list with you
Yeah.
and tell you what she's done and not done." Is that a scoop?
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah." Cher comes on the line. Hey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, and we did that, and I sent it down to the newspaper. In those days, you got your story in. Well, Miss Shepherd used to have a messenger come pick up her mimeograph sheets. By those days, they had invented these rubber cups, and you would buy these rubber cups at Radio Shack with a Radio Shack early laptop, and you had to run to a rotary phone. You'd write the thing, you'd press send, you'd rush to get the receiver into the rubber cups, and then, God willing, would transfer it the way you wrote it. Um,
Oh my
that's how
God.
you did things. So when I used to go to Palm Beach, Mrs. Maley said to the shiny sheet, the Palm Beach Daily News, if you syndicate his column, you can't have mine. So the Sainted editor, one of the early colleagues of John Fairchild, tough lady named Aggie Ash, said, goodbye, Aileen. And so I was page two
Oh my
for
God.
it was 8 years of the shiny sheet. When I went to Palm Beach, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But my hostess usually didn't have a rotary phone anymore. So the only rotary phone I knew was at Lily Pulitzer's. So I would write the column, I'd rush across the street to Lily Pulitzer's house,
Oh
where
my
her
God.
husband, who's now, they're all deceased, was the only person in Florida, I think, who supported Jesse Jackson's candidacy. I mean, it's just these people
Yeah.
were so colorful. Lily was
Yeah.
more colorful than her frocks.
Right.
And I would do the thing, and I was still drinking in those days, and I'd sit and have some Bloody Marys with Enrique,
Oh,
while
this
Lily,
is
who was the ultimate mother goddess. This was a very small world. Imagine. Do you think Ken Griffin would let me do that at his house?
no.
Those people in Palm Beach, no, no. They're no
Right.
man.
No.
No. And no PR person would let me go over to Cher's house.
No.
And because Cher said, fine, use my rotary phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No,
It's a very different world.
no, it's interesting. And then going from that, I wanted to talk briefly, about another writer who covered high society. I call this compose versus expose.
Hmm.
You and Truman Capote both chronicled society, but in very different ways. Truman Capote said all literature is gossip. He
Yeah.
wrote literary journalism, those devastating portraits in Esquire, especially Le Cote Basque, 1965, where he exposed his socialite friends' deepest secrets. He was part of the new journalism movement, using novelistic techniques to reveal the ultra rich. He wrote about his childhood being unnecessarily lonely. Your childhood was necessarily lonely, parents gone by 20. Yet you chose grace where he chose bitterness. You once said, I feel at some point I was either going to become the world's biggest bitch or I was going to upgrade and tap into all the wonderful people who have been around me. Hmm. He called his socialites swans and craved their attention, but Andy Warhol said Truman hated his subjects. Truman himself said he planned to assassinate his friends. You coined Cash Hamptons. You could spot every nuance, but never betrayed anyone. Is that the difference Truman exposed and you composed? He craved acceptance, but harbored resentment. You lost everything, but chose gratitude.
I
Right.
don't need to be reductive about because I'm sober. When I got to New York that first year, there was a disco open called New York, New York. It didn't do very well. But the opening night, Dora Frost, my friend, whose mother was Babe Paley's really best friend.
Mm.
And so I lived in my little studio apartment with a rug that Mrs. Bailey had given Mrs. Frost, who had given it to Dora, who gave it to me. I felt it was really up there. So Dora and I go to this club, and I loved, I mean, Truman Capote, Truman Capote, Truman Capote. We go to the disco, and we're a little early, and they had like a fog machine. And the next thing we know, Truman gets out on the dance floor. He's drunk as a skunk, dancing, and he wipes out across the floor. And Dora, who knew more about alcoholism than I did, said, "Poor Mr. Capote, he just can't stop drinking." I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I mean, I kept drinking, but uh,
Yeah.
but he was miserable. He was a miserable human being. And I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but he was really unhappy, and he had a disease, the disease of alcoholism, and which is a disease of more. So
Yeah.
if you put him on your airplane and you flew him with you to Capri, it was never enough. And he would sit there. I guess he was bitter. He either wanted
Yeah.
to be the people he wanted that money.
Yeah.
He had money
Yeah.
problems, but I have money problems.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
the huge difference. It's
you know,
these and not having known how deep these relationships go from childhood. It's not like they befriended you for any other reason. It's not that you befriended them for any other reason. You were friends before you were a writer covering.
certainly of the old guard,
Yes.
of the social
Yeah.
register
Yeah.
crowd. I
Yeah.
knew enough of them, and they were incredibly, so I knew enough. They weren't strangers.
Right.
I'm trying to, and
Because you knew them, it's harder. It's kind of like, and I forget what Andy Warhol said. I was reading up about how he put his subjects at a distance, right?
Andy,
Andy, yeah.
yes, he did.
So the fact that you knew them, you couldn't, A, what you knew of them, your relationship, you couldn't write what you didn't know, and you weren't going to make up stuff that they were negative people if you had this true love with them. And there would be no reason to do that. It's not like you were protecting them. I mean, I'm sure there were times that you chose to not reveal something because they are your friends. That's another thing I was going to ask you. Was there phone calls that you would have that would be, is this off the record, Billy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I assume a
Um,
lot of calls of your
I
friends would start with that.
I have tapes. I kept all my cassette tapes, bags of cassette tapes of every interview I ever did. And someone told me I could get a huge tax deduction. Thing about tax deductions, you need to have a huge income to offset it.
Right.
Um, if
Exactly.
I, along with the papers, and I really have a nice collection of stuff, the autographs, the pictures,
Yeah.
letters, the tapes. John Kennedy's first print interview was with Vogue, John Kennedy Jr., uh,
Yeah.
with Vogue, shot by Annie Leibovitz, written by me, organized by me. And we had a long, heartfelt interview of many, many, many off the record things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to think, okay, I can get this big tax deduction. But I thought about all the people who told me their secrets, and
Yeah.
not my place. It's not my
Right.
place. It just isn't my
And
place.
they told you not as a writer, as their
They told me
friend.
as a writer so they could bridge to the next thing they were going
Oh,
to,
got it. Got it.
which
Got
is
it.
what
It
really,
was, yes, you
it wasn't
couldn't.
like they wanted, and then we didn't go to dinner.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right. Right.
and
So you could, when you're writing it, make a connection without revealing. It's kind of like when you talk to someone, you have to tell, well, this is why that happened. Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
and so much of that in these tapes and in conversations. You want to know? I mean, I saw John Kennedy Jr. naked once. I mean, what he said to me was hysterical.
Yeah.
I will tell you this story. I was
Yeah.
with my mom, but after this novel I'm writing, I'm never writing again. I'm done.
Okay.
I'm going to do Instagram. That's all I can handle.
Yeah.
Um, or whatever they invent. Oh, and then gym culture came into New York City. And there was a gym. Well, back in the old days, in the 60s, there was a place called Kanowski's Gym, and it was really gymnastics. And so Vogue would do a story on Chesy Rayner and Mika Erdogan going to Kanowski's gym, and they're dancing in leotards, and
Yeah.
everyone's getting fit. But then there was Radu. Now, I don't know if Radu is still around, if you ever heard of him, but he was a Romanian little pocket Hercules, and he had a space right next to Kanowski on 57th Street. And Holland because I was a runner. That is why I liked being up by something.
Oh. Oh, so you just use that and
I
not
did,
you.
and
Yeah.
I did, and I was on the track team at Pomfret. There was that unfortunate time when I had taken some acid that hadn't worn off, and my event was the 880. It's 16 times around the track,
Oh my.
and we were against St. Paul's, which is a really fancy school, and I had only gotten around 8 times, and everyone else had finish. So I was tripping in the
Oh my God.
things I don't like to tell, but I did. So Radu was a dump, with all due respect. And you saw everybody, Tom Freston and Sandy Hill Pittman and all the 80s people went there. And
Yeah.
Colin said to me, she said, "You've got quite nice legs and a butt." She said, "But you have nothing going on above the waist. You've got to start working out." So I went to Radu.
Yeah.
And John Kennedy used to go to Radu. And the men's room was this big, tiny, I'm showing a plan,
Yeah. Yeah.
with a moldy stall shower. And so one day after I had sweated my ass off, I knew he was in the gym that day. I opened the door to get my stuff, and he's coming out of the shower. He had just been called People Magazine's Sexiest Man of the Year, gleaming like a king
No.
dolphin. I looked, and he looked, and he said, with his finger, he's still in the half out of the shower, dripping wet,
Yeah.
looking for a towel. "Billy, this is not for your column." Isn't that great?
I love
Bless
it.
his heart. And I don't mean to fire him, and I was like, you know what? I want that memory for me. I'm not going to
Yes.
write about it. What, you want me to describe it?
Yeah.
Yes. No. No. And I
Oh my
think maybe
God.
that's why he came to, well, his mother liked me. His mother saved my career at one point. Um, that's a whole other story.
Oh,
And we had a trust. And his cousin,
yeah.
Anthony Radziwill, is all about the gym, was a huge friend builder in those days for us. There was a gym up on 91st Street, and I used to go every morning at the crack of dawn, like so hungover for the trainer. And Anthony Radziwill would be there, and he was a big producer at ABC Nightline, maybe one of the ABC news shows. That's where he met his wife, Carol Radziwill.
Yep.
And he'd be on the Stairmaster. It would be me. It was a man named, son is still around and a big swordsman in New York. Uh, he owned Converse sneakers. And then Monica Lynch, who had been the secretary for Tommy Silverman, who started Tommy Boy Records. But Monica rose the ranks, ended up being the CEO, and she discovered and was the first, she signed RuPaul, Latifah,
Wow.
Mark and the Chunky Bunch, Funky Bunch, and other rap stars of the day. And Anthony became my confessor. You would have hoped he might talk.
Yeah.
I did all the talking.
Yeah.
And these are really fond memories of mine.
Yeah.
I would talk to these people. They all knew my story if I was
Yeah.
working. I mean, if we
Right.
were somewhere together.
Yeah.
But like I said, I knew the reason I liked this story. So I was a contract player at the Daily News, and most of the columnists were in those days. I think Mr. Lupica was on staff, like writing in the column, so he had benefits. And one day, the newspaper guild went on strike against the Daily News, and they actually couldn't print. I was in Vogue, where I would go out at night and come to
Yeah.
Vogue in the morning for the features meeting and whatever we were doing. And I was editing either People Are Talking About and then something called Talking Fashion.
Yeah.
And before the internet, before we had a good computer, my job was to basically get all Roxanne Lowett's slides, tell her where to go tonight, or Mary Hilliard, and then try and keep track of the slides.
Didn't you at one point do People Are Talking About and Talking Fashion? Yeah,
Yeah.
because when I think about, we had two
And,
people doing Talking Fashion when I
right,
left, and
right. And then I
multiple
also
women.
did for Kate Beth something called Fashion Front, which was a fashion kind of society column, but really product oriented. And
Right.
I don't remember what else I did. I was miserable because every year they used to do a Winona Ryder story, and I never got the assignment. And that's all I wanted was to write about Winona Ryder. Then she
Oh my
had an
God.
unfortunate moment shoplifting in
Yeah. And I got the
2014.
first cover story after that.
See? Um, so the Daily News stops publishing. My phone stopped ringing. They're on strike. Suddenly, all my new best friends, no newspaper, no transaction, no phone call. dropped.
Mm,
You could hear an echo. And Anna, after day two, I don't think it went on that long. On
yeah.
day two, because we had this class thing, and I could see her coming and going.
Yeah. Yeah.
She came and she opened, well, the door was open. She came and said,
Yeah.
phone not ringing? And I said, it's really weird, Anna. The phone's, I mean, like I died. That, of course, instantly thought, oh, but Vogue calls, Vogue calls.
Yep.
And, um, and she listened and she smiled and she said, I don't want you to worry. I can always ask to see if there's anything available in the market department of brides. And I loved her for that. I love her for many reasons. And
Yeah.
I
Into
talked,
her.
and then I called Patrick McCarthy, my best friend, who was
Yeah.
running Square Daily and W. And I said, the phone stopped ringing. And I said, guess what Anna said? He said, what did she say? Because they were competitors, but they liked
Yeah.
it a
Yep.
lot.
I was, yeah.
And I told him the story, and he roared with laughter. For Patrick, it was as seminal an experience for him. We better stick together, the journalists, and be friends. You couldn't take care of it? You didn't hear from me.
Yeah.
So I got very clear early on. Now, out of that, a few people did really become my friends. But after I started
Right.
the gossip column, they were interested, and I was interested in keeping up with them. Katie
Well,
Merritt, who was
yeah.
a colleague at Vogue, and she was doing the houses, is
Yeah.
my best friends today. Anna, Patrick was, Blaine, and other people as well. And now my theory in life is, and you might want to end this there, but I know you have other questions. So now I'm trying to hold on, last long enough. I've gotten bigger eyeglasses every 2 years. So maybe I can just pontificate and get paid to pontificate. Because in fashion, don't get old unless
Right.
you're Grace
Right.
Coddington, because she's transparent about it. She keeps going.
Right. Right.
Um, don't get old. Don't get old. And if you can hang in like Harry Donovan, get big eyeglasses and talk funny. Do an Old Navy ad. So I'm hoping something happens. This,
Exactly.
in fact, is my audition.
Well, you've talked about Anna throughout, but maybe let's talk about when she said, edit your life.
Why? Or you mean
Yeah.
keep your cards closer to your chest?
Oh, that was okay. Was that around a breakup or no?
Oh, that story. It's good.
Yeah.
No, there are a couple of stories.
Okay. But they were motherly in not when I say motherly, it's just that nurturing. It's going a bit past friends.
Right.
There, and it's an instinct from the other person, not to say you needed the guidance or the advice. It's just a nurturing, it's different than a
Wisdom.
friendship. You know what I
She
mean?
had
It's
wisdom and
yeah,
street smarts long before I had them.
yeah,
I don't know how she got them in London in the swinging 60s, but she's smart and
yeah.
she knows how to deal. And I've always benefited from that. There are a couple of them. One is I really went a very long time before I had a relationship that would replicate a couple. Which isn't to say I was particularly promiscuous, but perhaps I was promiscuous. I wanted it, but I really wanted my career. I wanted to make money. I wanted to take care of myself,
Yeah.
and I just didn't.
No, I know that. Listen, I didn't have a kid
Yeah,
till 40. Like our industry, it's a bit you want it, but is it going to be
right,
first? No.
right.
So, yeah.
Jacob Bernstein, the writer, Nora Ephron's son, and Carl Bernstein's son, was my assistant at the New York Times, and we would go to fashion shows. He tells me, I said, "You've just been in a room with 200 gay men who would much rather have a dress than a date." And that's how fashion people are. They're obsessed
Yeah.
with all that
No.
crap. Whoops. Like the new shoe. The new shoe? What about the new boyfriend?
Right. Exactly.
So I met a guy at some charity ball. Really attractive guy, still is. And I was amazed he wanted to date me. And so we had a date. We had a lovely time. We're having a second date. And so I decided I would go to Giorgio Armani and buy him something. So I went and bought some sort of beautiful shirt, a little flouncy, but so be it.
Yeah.
We'd go from the 350 Madison to the dinner downtown.
Hmm.
And Anna as she might do from time to time, would pop you open. Are you going downtown? Would you like a ride? I mean, she did share a car,
Yeah.
unlike other people, she shared a.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. And so we get in the car and she sees the Armani bag. So what's in the bag? So Anna, I met this guy. I'm just going to go see him. And I wanted to bring him a present. She said, how nice. How long have you been seeing him for? I said, this is the second date. And she looked and she said, give me the bag. Give me the bag. She said, it is way too early to start giving the guy presents. And I was like, really? And so I gave her the bag. And it stayed in my office for a long time. And eventually I just went down the hall to a man named Paul Willman. I said, here, I have a shirt for you. He said, what's this about? And I told him the story and he roared with laughter. She's right.
Yeah.
That man and I were together for many years because maybe I didn't give him the shirt.
Right.
The other one was, so I leave Vogue. And the real truth is, and I don't talk about this much because I wasn't very happy there. Anna and I had kind of some, it was time to leave Vogue. Um, it was going in a direction. It became very different in the
Yeah.
independence and all this stuff. And for me, because I wasn't at that point the star writer, it wasn't a particularly a writerly experience. And I don't remember who was doing the celebrity stuff and Maggie
Oh,
Buckman.
okay. Yeah, it was Maggie. Yeah.
They were putting Barbara Streisand on the cover of Vogue again, and Stephen Meisel was going to do the pictures, and he was thrilled. And they asked her who she wanted to write, and I'd written
Yeah.
an essay about her for a cover of Interview magazine when Ingrid Sishi was the editor of that. And she loved it, wrote me a letter, and she said, do you ever work with Billy Norwich as a writer? And she was told by Maggie, no, Billy doesn't write profiles. Uh, Obviously, that was not a happy day.
Yes.
And
Oh.
I wasn't supposed to know that, but I went to a party. I know I'm dropping names too heavily. I went to a party at Liza Minnelli's, and next thing I saw, Barbara Streisand was walking towards me, and she said, what's this crap about you not writing for Vogue? I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, I'm doing this story and I wanted you to write it, but I was told you don't write profiles. And I was very, very, and it was time to go. So House and Garden had relaunched and I went over there. James Truman organized for me to go to be in charge of pizzazz. It didn't really work out. But luckily, my friend, the late Amy Spindler, who was the fashion critic of the New York Times and then the editor of the style pages of the New York Times, before had tea in the back of the New York Times Magazine, remember, there were a lot of ads in those days still, print ads. They had 8 to sometimes 12 pages of style coverage that would be all men's fashion, women's fashion, children's fashion, home design. And Amy wanted to do style and entertaining, which would be how we entertain at home, what we wear, how we decorate. And she thought I could do that. And it was thrilling. And that's how I would end up going to the New York Times. But why am I telling you all of this? I left Vogue. So anyway, I go to the New York Times. But remember, Anna Wintour is still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. And I wanted to stay in constant contact. And I think over the years, she came to be fond of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Employee. And I was hoping the New York Times wouldn't figure it out, Mrs. Exeter, with an amazing group of these women that I'd met through the years helping me, including Barbara Walters, who always said no to any story about what she wore because she had spent so much goddamn time trying to be taken seriously. She
Right.
loved to dress. And she knew who Mrs. Exeter was. And I got to be friendly with Barbara Walters
Yeah.
because people are going to hate me. I'm just
I
dropping.
love the pictures with
Right.
her.
Well, that picture of us at Ivana's second marriage, we were like the only civilians there. The rest were press from Europe. And,
Oh my God.
and after the I do's, Ivana had given an exclusive to Hello Magazine, Hola Magazine,
Yep.
and she went to do those private pictures. And we were politely waiting for the meal, the reception, and I think we waited 3 hours. So Barbara Walters and I bonded for life. And I would see her from time I'd go to her house for
Yeah.
dinner,
Yeah.
and which was always a workout because she was one of those people that she'd have all the potentates in the world around her circular table. And she'd ask some very difficult question. And you'd have to go around the table and say something. Usually lightweights like me would die of embarrassment. And if
Oh
you
my
pass, she'd
God.
look at you really like you were being embarrassed.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, we bonded. And I told her about Mrs. Exeter. Did you ever heard of Mrs. Exeter? She said, oh my God, I love those stories in the 50s and 60s. It stopped in the 60s, I think. Mrs. Exeter wasn't particularly hip. She was your
Right.
mother. She was her grandmother.
Yeah, yeah.
She wore tailored clothes from Peck and Peck. And I told her, she said, well, if you ever need anything, call me. And so when I would be writing, I would often email Barbara or telephone her, and she'd say, I
Yeah.
think this is what you should do. This is what you should say. Isn't
Oh
that
my
wonderful?
God. That's
And
so
because she
amazing.
wasn't allowed to dress, she wasn't allowed to care.
Right.
We really used to live in antediluvian. It was like bad, bad. It's not now, it's a cultural signifier. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's wild.
everyone wants to get a job in fashion and go to parties. Um,
So,
so I was, where am I at? Birthday party. Amy was very young and she had breast cancer. When she was the New York Times critic, she replaced someone named Bernadine Morse. And they never had a fashion critic. Bernadine's way of doing criticism was to not cover a collection, whereas Amy would
right.
say what she thought. And she was brilliant, brilliant woman. Now she's the editor and she wanted to do style and entertaining. And I went and we did it. We launched a magazine. We had a lot of ads. September 11th, 9/11 put us back. Amy then had brain cancer and Amy died. And it was a really sad day for all of us, not as well as her husband and her family.
Right.
And then who's going to be the new Amy? So I, ambitious, pretentious and ambitious moi. So I wanted that job very much.
Yeah.
I did my best to get it and didn't get it. They hired Stefano Tonki, who wasn't working at the New York Times at the time. And the first thing Stefano did was fire me because you always want to hire your own number two. We
Oh,
understand.
yeah. Listen, everyone I've talked to, we've talked about that when Phyllis, especially when Anna took over Vogue. Let's be
Yeah,
clear. Phyllis had to re-interview. Thank God for Alex Lieberman. But Phyllis said to me, a lot of women left when Anna got hired, when they heard, and Anna would have fired them anyway. Phyllis said everyone that left was going to get fired anyway. But yeah, that's the whole thing when a change of the guard.
that's right. And so I understood it, but
Yep.
I was heartbroken because
Of course.
Dan I was talking about who didn't get the Armani shirt on the second date had fallen in love with somebody else and started a family with them. And we had built a house
Oh
and
God.
Amy died and I was crestfallen. And then Adam Moss, who was our boss, who's I loved, I don't know if you
Yeah.
know, so just really everything they say about him is a great editor.
Yeah.
He left to go be an editor-in-chief of New York Magazine, and I was alone, and Stefano, and someone must have told Anna. And now the New York Times in those days was on 43rd Street. So if you wanted to go to the Condé Nast building, which was then on, well, 42nd, 43rd,
Yeah.
you'd literally cross Times Square, step over the tourists who would be
Yep.
cement things in the heat of summer. Their tushy's getting very warm, I would think. And you go to Vogue. So she called and she said, listen, I mean, she knew Amy had died and she knew Adam.
Yeah.
She could imagine. She had just heard about my friend. It all happened in the same couple of months. And she said, would you ever consider coming back to Vogue? So I can't really talk to you about what we're going to do, but you'll have a column. You can write long pieces. You don't have to come into the office if you don't want to,
Right.
but you're more than welcome to get a desk here and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And with Anna, short conversation. And I said to her, Anna, are you looking out your window? And I said, do you see me with my legs dangling out my window here sometimes? I said, send the barge if it can get across Times Square. And then before we ended the conversation, she said, is I know this is a tough time for you, Billy. When is your birthday? Isn't it in the summer? I said, yeah, it's July 18th. And she said, I'm going to give you your birthday party. And I was like, really? She said, Anna always, eh, learning to drive, she gave a party. The kids' book, she came to the party and stood next to me because it was chaos at Barney's. She showed up for me.
Yeah.
Uh, I was blown away. So I was really depressed as a result of this particular year. And that's when
Yeah.
I had to start doing my grief work because I had
And
been
so this was
grief.
giving you something that you
And
had
every
to,
time I wanted to, and I don't mean to use the term loosely,
no, I
kill
know.
myself.
Yeah.
That's heavy and a lot, but
Yeah.
it's real stuff. In my mind, my hero was Anna Wintour. She walked on water in high heels. I thought, oh, fuck.
She's
I can't.
throwing me a party.
She's throwing me a party.
Yeah, and she
And
knew
I
that.
better show up. And I better
And
not overeat between now and July.
yeah, and she knew that when she said that.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's
That's also when The Devil Wears Prada, I think, published as a book. And we all told her no one would read the book. And then we went a couple of years later when the movie came out.
yeah.
Book, I can't remember the Tucci character's name was in the book,
Yeah. Yeah,
modeled
I
after
can't.
Andre.
y-
And I want to say
Well,
Judy
it's probably a
wasn't
mix of
people, but in the
yeah.
movie, I think someone told because
Yeah.
he was such a replica of Vogue, at least
Yeah.
visually.
Oh, I know. I mean,
Uh,
she got it
Whoever
down
the
to
consultant was, whoever the movie consultant
Anna had her office changed.
as after the
Yeah.
movie came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And according to some newspapers, Tucci was me because
Yeah.
you have the tall black man that might not be politically correct. So
Right.
get the little Jew. And I was avuncular with everyone. I was very caring and I got the assistants jobs, the writing.
No, of course.
And
Yeah.
very proud of all that. Um, we went to the screening together. And I had no idea how much I felt I resembled, or vice versa,
Yeah.
Tucci.
Yeah.
He was wearing in the movie a clunker of a ring, which embarrassed me. I was embarrassed for us, my doppelganger over there. The movie's over, and she leaned forward.
Yeah.
I said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm okay." And she bolted out of there because she did not want to be part of the promotion.
Right. Right.
Wasn't going to get photographed with the cast.
Right.
So that's another Anna story.
And she wore Prada.
And she wore Prada.
Yep.
And I, who was very unhappy about this, like, gone are the days of paying your dues. You know,
Yeah.
parents who don't like that their kids are getting cappuccino for a skinny woman. So they
Yeah.
send you to writing school and they tell you, write what you know. And what does she know? So I was really like, whereas Anna didn't give it, she moved on. She moved on
Yeah. Yeah.
instantly.
Well, she said, I always like a good piece of fiction when the
Right.
book, yep,
That's
when the
right.
book came out.
Um, but Jill, I didn't come to until that summer when it came out. I remember being at a publicity luncheon. There was a New York Times columnist there who, in the middle of lunch, leaned forward. He said, "So, Billy, let me ask you a question. Is Anna Wintour really as big a bitch as she's portrayed in that movie?" I didn't answer him. And he repeated it 3 times.
Yeah.
I said to him, "Number one, she's my employer. Number two, I love her more than almost anyone in the world."
Yeah.
He said, "I don't have to answer this." And this is what he said, which is what I'm telling you. He said,
Yeah.
"You do. That movie's now all on the public record now. So you talk about private, where is the line between privacy and public for anything in the public eye?" And I said, "No, it isn't. My job, my friend,
Right.
my right not to talk about Anna, except to say she walks on water in high heels."
Yeah. But this kind of leads to a question with learning to drive. So in your 1996 novel, Learning to Drive, so this is a metaphor for confronting a traumatic past. You said this novel was autobiographical in a sense. Okay, so this is kind of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
According to research, your protagonist, Julian Orr, a jaded New York journalist in his late 30s, is urged by his therapist to get a driver's license so he can visit his parents' graves in Connecticut, a journey that unexpectedly escalates into a public crisis. You've said that when you recently reread the novel, you had forgotten that it included, quote, so many of the narrator's insecurities and his desperate need to become a writer, a real writer, a literary writer. You went on to say that you'd learned from experience a big secret about writing. A writer is only as good as his next story. So we've covered a bit about your story and the failures, the entitlement, the stones, everything. Was this novel your way of finally taking the wheel of your own life? And what did it mean when you said a writer's only as good as his next story? You had gotten into it briefly. In the beginning of this interview, you talked about your journey finding your voice in both senses, right? Your literary voice, you can finally write in the first person. I mean, there you
Right,
go. And the Wild Kingdom between your
right.
ears. But this is kind of a memoir in a sense. It's fiction, but it was interesting some of the reviews, how people talked about it being autobiographical, but you never outright say that. But when something's fiction, but it's so close to your story, why make it fiction?
Well,
Is that a weird
mhm,
question?
not at all. In terms of the construction of that book,
Yeah.
I think one chapter is in his past and one chapter is in his present. I never, well, I actually did. I did have that. He has a horrible experience with the person who finally takes him. He's flunked 3 times. You have to go back to driving school if you don't get your license within a year of the permit. That's not fiction.
Right.
And that's what happened. Something probably came up, like I had to write about a debutante party or something, and I couldn't go to my New York City motor vehicle that day, and the clock was ticking, and you went in those days to the motor vehicle that was assigned to your area where you lived
Right.
or something. And I had a friend who was still have the friend, but high up in the government in Albany. I said, can you do me a favor and get me an appointment anywhere around Manhattan, a suburb, for this thing? And he loved the story. He loved that I kept flunking, and he was very amused. And Taggart's, the driving school, was somehow responsible for you to get to your test or something. You went with the driving teacher.
Okay.
I don't know how that was organized or whether it's still how it is. Um, so the teacher from Taggart's came. I think he came under great duress. He had his little daughter in the back seat. He couldn't find a babysitter.
Oh.
And we went off to Shepherd's Shepherd's Bay. It's an area in Brooklyn. One didn't know Brooklyn in those days. One might
Exactly.
still not know Brooklyn in these days. Um, and so off we went. And remember, no GPS in those, still, no ways. And he got lost. We kept driving around in circles on the Belt Parkway, and I lost it. I don't know, I felt great pressure.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be kind to myself, I would say it was important. My therapist said, how are
Yeah.
you going to get to visit your parents' graves where I
Yes.
hadn't been in years? And I said, I'll get a car service. And he said, cut it out.
Yeah.
Learn to drive. It's a metaphor. So I felt a real failure. And although I didn't know until years later what was going on, I mean, if you will, certain psychiatrists call it a trauma timeline where you go through the whole thing and then you remember.
Yeah.
I didn't know from a trauma timeline. I really didn't know I had PTSD, probably.
Right.
I mean, all these things that we have now.
Yeah, of
uh,
course.
If there were terms, I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why it was so important to me. Like, okay, I'll go back to Taggart's, to the class. And they were boring. And get another permit, difficult. Um, and I lost it. I went against all the rules I knew, which was you don't insult someone's physicality. You do not embarrass them in front of their family and their children. And so here I was, this entitled son of a bitch who could get a table in any restaurant, couldn't really afford once you got inside, but never mind,
Right. Yeah.
uh, acting really uppity in front of this man's child. That's what happened. And eventually we got to the thing. I got in the car. We were driving. Now with the state inspector,
Right.
the driving teacher waits for me.
Right. Right. Of course. Yep.
And I drive through a stop sign. I'm going to flunk. And I turned to the driving instructor and I said, would you not agree with me that the tree that covered that sign should be trimmed? He said, it wasn't that visible. And he said, I agree with you. So I passed. Yay, I got all.
Oh, yes.
That's all that happened. Now, in the book, a
Yeah.
lot more happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course.
Really
Yeah.
exaggerated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Really, and we kill people. We run people over. I mean, it really goes on. It's a little,
Yeah. So it's basically that it's the way in, you're using your story and the backstory of why Julian is getting the license to open up the
yeah.
fiction. Yeah.
There were a lot of people who just liked it for the party scenes
Right.
in it. The New York Times, when they reviewed it, put every character's name in boldface, which was clever and cute and unusual for the New York Times
Yeah.
book review. But if you think about it, they were reviewing me as opposed to the story at hand. And that also hurt. A lot of this stuff hurt, you know. And I had to go on a book tour without, and I'll bring it right back to what we're talking about. I had to go on a book tour where there were no books in stores, where it was me being reviewed. I just wasn't comfortable with it. I really wanted to be a writer, even though I wrote in the first person, writing in the third person. I needed to write that. And for me, what's the book about? The book is about what happens when your parents die and you're young.
Yeah,
That's all the
right,
book's about.
right.
The book comes out in England, and no one gives a shit who I am. And it got really nice reviews.
Well, I have to say, like being on set, and I'll never ever forget this with Demi Moore, and I'm sitting somewhere and I'm on the phone, and Demi's like holding her stomach, and she goes, "What's going on? I can feel my stomach starting to hurt." And my stomach, whenever I got stressed, would hurt. She was into Kabbalah. It goes deeper. If you've read anything she's written about Bruce Willis and what's going on right now, she's a very deep, she
Mhm.
doesn't just say this shit. So,
Right.
and it led her to talk about why she doesn't read reviews, but she doesn't read good reviews or bad reviews.
Mhm.
It's that thing. If you can't like a good review and then be mad at a bad review, you cannot care what the fuck either
Right.
one of them, because they're, your
Right.
work is your work. And, but don't just read the good ones. That's just as bad in a
Yeah,
way. Right. So that's
absolutely.
because it does fuck with you.
It really fucks you now with Amazon, and what's called reader reviews are very important. Everyone talks about this, and someone at the Times of London did a story about this. The first reviews are horrible because your enemies use fake names, and as a result of the two, three, four, or five bad reviews, you will never be at five, which is the highest level.
Oh my
So
God.
if you really want to screw anyone you know who writes and publishes a book, that's what you do. It took 3 years for this writer at the London Times. And I couldn't, I've been trying to find this article because I talk about it all the time. But maybe it's like the letter my father wrote. Maybe I made it up. My agent is this wonderful guy named Bill Clegg. And so I
Of
want,
course,
want
yeah.
him to see this article because, like, how do we work
I'll
against it?
find it. I'll find
Somebody tell the Bezos about it, since
yeah,
they're
yeah.
now your new best friends and you're dancing at their wedding. No, fact and fiction. The childhood stuff was people say, because I drop names so heavily and with so much enthusiasm, I should write a memoir. Well, I helped Diane von Furstenberg write an advice book we published at Fine, did very well. And I spent a lot of time with her. I've known her my whole career. But she brought that up and she said, will you write a memoir? And I said, no, I don't even know what to call it. I said, I don't really trust my memory. One of the things when I stopped writing the gossip column was because, and I don't mean to portend that I have psychic sensibilities, but if I went to a party and I talked to you and you were reading red, but I picked up some sadness from you, if I didn't make a note when I described your Bill Blast dress,
Mm.
we're wearing blue. So even when I made my best efforts to get something right, there was always a mistake or several. And it wasn't my first mistake that was totally embarrassing. They bold-faced names in gossip columns, and I went early on in maybe late 85 or early 86 to this marvelous, I think it might have been the last time Mr. Sonnerat was in New York, and they did a dinner for him at Mortimer's and all this stuff. And I went and I was describing the table decorations because I know that's something people like to know what we have
Yeah.
on the table. And I talked about the Dendrobian orchids. Now, I don't know if you're into gardening at all, but a Dendrobian orchid is a species of orchid. But I thought it was someone's name. And so it came out Dan, boldface, Drobian. You want to embarrass myself
Oh.
constantly. When Miss Shepherd used to misspell people's names, she finally said, I misspell everyone's name wrong at least once a year to keep them humble.
That is
A
great.
riot. Um,
Well, let me go to 20 years after learning to drive comes My Mrs. Brown. You've said pretty much as soon as I started writing, Mrs. Brown came through. Her life, her voice, her joy, and her sadness. I felt like I was channeling, not writing. You've also said that your immersion in her character was so deep that your partner Garrett suggested she might be your alter ego.
mhm.
I read a quote from a reviewer of the book saying fiction is often memoir in disguise, and maybe it is here.
Mhm.
So, who is she to you, really? Mother, all the women, Fashion Forgets, yourself.
Mhm.
You've said Mrs. Brown's character is the character of a lot of nice people. They just don't talk about it. So I talked about it on her behalf.
Mhm.
The Times called it a gentle rebuke to today's hyped up fashion culture, but you work in that culture. So let's talk about who Mrs. Brown is and how do you reconcile being inside the fashion machine while writing its rebuke?
At that point, I was editing fashion and interior design books for Phaidon.
Okay.
So I did the book while I was still at Vogue,
Okay.
right? Yeah. Um, and they come out every 10 years or 20 years because of the day jobs. Um, that story, channeling Mrs. Exeter at Vogue and getting to write as Mrs. Exeter opened me up to a whole new thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can describe it because I haven't really thought about it, but it's all woohoo. It's a woohoo thing.
Well,
So
you talked about the women that would write to you,
yeah,
so you got to know
absolutely.
this woman.
I began to, I mean, she's my mother, but what happens at the end, and I don't know if I talk about the end, what really happened was, so I'm
And
at
I'm
Vogue.
going to link these books,
Okay.
so you don't have to give
Thank you.
everything. But when you talk about that blue truck that came by
Yeah.
and the dress, I
Yeah.
mean, right away, I'm going to the
Right.
last page of my notes of Mrs. Brown. So
Yes.
it's,
Absolutely. And the longer I actually wrote from a position in the so-called fashion world, the more and more and more I appreciated my initial exposure to clothing. Ultimately, I think, paraphrase a British historian, it's my favorite quote on fashion. He says, clothing is inevitable. It is the furniture of the mind made visible. I love anything that responds to what does it mean? So, like Robin Given will often, and Vanessa Friedman, former Vogue colleague, will address the symbolism of what we're seeing
right.
in these many, many optics now.
Yep.
Um, but there's not a lot of that, really. There's not a lot of analysis of fashion, at least in this country, where, but this idea of style as an intervention, a sickly woman buys a lipstick, buys a coat with a fur collar, orders a new pair of shoes that she can never wear. And I'm not talking about shopaholicism,
No.
where, and everyone in the household can appreciate the intervention, the lift.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people will do that with their decorating, their flower arranging. And life's not so easy, is it anymore?
Or it's going to the beauty parlor.
Well, absolutely.
It's how
That's why,
Jimmy would watch his mother get ready for a night out and he saw the lift of her. He saw the
well,
confidence, the
absolutely. Kevin Aquan's mother, the same thing, and
yeah.
how
That was Jimmy Paul. I always forget last
yeah,
names for the people that are
Evelyn Lauder, uh, Leonard Lauder's first
yeah.
wife, mother of his kids. And she had breast cancer. She lived for a really long time, bless her soul. Huge cancer research. But with it, she supported like wigs for people who
Yeah.
have radiation. The pink lipstick, that's where it was at for me the whole time. I didn't realize it
Mm-hmm.
because believe me, I have my fashion moments. Oh my God. You do know that Carleen Surf credits me with the revival of Birkenstocks. Um, I'll digress for a second. I went in those back in the day when particularly Grace did those stories with Bruce or with those real narrative stories,
Yeah, Arthur and yeah.
they sent me to write the captions because there were people there to interview and captions were deeper. So
Yeah.
I went on the Snow White shoot where, the black Snow White and LL Cool J was wearing Birkenstocks. So this is in the 90s or
Yeah.
late 80s, and I had worn them as a hippie in the 70s or as a wannabe hippie. I went up, did a whole thing at Vogue about that. But the longer I was in this world, the more that meant things to me. And the longer that the world then shifted to like intelligent women starting their Instagram and only taking pictures of their shoes. And
Yeah.
when I think it was Reese Witherspoon who came up with the idea, or she promoted the idea of someone
Yeah.
hashtag ask her more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it did change. It did change.
Well, I mean, I think there's been resistance to it. We're still seeing people who are obsessed.
Ask her more unless she's getting a check. I mean, let's be real.
Hello, thank
There's
you.
two sides to
Right.
this. So, yeah.
But that actually wasn't
Yeah.
I didn't have to concern myself with that
Right.
part.
Exactly.
The
I
re
know exactly.
My whole life, I haven't had to concern myself with too much reality because I live in my own little world, the wild
Right.
kingdom between my ears.
Right. Right.
But then what happened was, my Mrs. Brown is fan fiction. There's a book called Mrs.
Hmm.
Harris Goes
Yep.
to Paris, which everyone of a certain age had read when it came
Yeah.
out in 1959 by Paul Gallico, who wrote The Snow Goose. I was shopping at Bergdorf Goodman one day. Jane Stubbs had some bookshelves of vintage books. I saw the book and I asked her about it. She said, it's a wonderful book. She said, I think you'll really like it. So I bought it, and when I read it, it was like one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah.
Just the story of a charwoman
Yeah.
right after World War II in London, where there were so many deprivations, like no silk, no flowers, and colors coming back to London life.
Hmm.
And she has a different client every day to clean for. And she has one kind of like showgirly type, sort of an it girl type. And she opens up her to put her handbag into her cupboard, and she sees this Dior flower dress, floral, new look, flowers.
Yeah.
She so falls in love with it after the deprivation she experiences. She vows, just like a Mrs. Brown, she's going to go get
Yeah.
those dresses. She's going to get a beautiful party dress. How she goes about it, what happens when she goes. I read it and I thought, in the context of red carpet culture and my real kind of beginning my repulsion of it,
Yeah.
which wasn't going to work so well in my job.
Right. Right.
And I thought, if this were in America now, what would this charwoman, what would this blue collar lady, what dress would it be? What dress would it be? And it was one of the Barbara Walters, Mrs. Astor, first ladies. They all have one black suit that they've trot out when they want to come into your boardroom meeting.
Right.
And those black suits were power suits. And it
Yeah.
really goes back to Mrs. Kennedy and her black suit, which was really a pink suit that Bill Cunningham, working at Chez Nignon, dyed pink so she could wear it to Dallas. Is that how it goes? Anyway, to those
Yeah.
suits. So my mother isn't doing well in 1963.
Right.
Mrs. Kennedy wears that black suit and a veil. And it was one of the rare times when you could see it in American life where someone was doing the right thing from A to Z.
Right.
And so I thought of the conversations I had. There was a woman, Judy Peabody, and Mrs. Peabody had really big hair. And Mrs. Astor talked to me about it. They knew if they showed up at a meeting, particularly if they wanted to raise money, like going to the Ford Foundation, they wore their black suits because the people in the meeting were expecting to see Mrs. Astor. And if she tried anything trickier, it wouldn't be Mrs. Astor in their minds. The
Right.
power of a suit. And now we were feeding people this idea of, yeah, you're 100 years old, but go wear a Galliano slip dress.
True.
That's fashion. But tailoring and all that that means symbolically, the good orderly direction of a tailored suiting. So I couldn't let it go. And I basically wrote fan fiction. And my Mrs. Brown, who lives in Rhode Island, all my books take place sort of in Rhode
Yeah.
Island.
Yeah.
It's right over the border from Norwich and New London. And
Yeah.
I just love that part of the world. Um, and I thought, we'll be a black suit. But then I thought, this is America. So she's not going to go to, well, Alexander wouldn't have made it for her, I don't think.
Right. Right.
Oscar was making black suits for people.
Yeah.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Astor was at Oscar's. I mean, it wasn't necessarily on the rack, but Oscar had a very thriving small
Right.
couture business, like brides. And we covered a lot of those. Go to Oscar and watch
Yeah.
somebody get a wedding dress. So it was an Oscar dress, and very much it was how she got it and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
She comes to New York. Aaron's probably thinking she's going to get a great Oscar de la Renta gown, but no, she gets a black suit. We don't know why she wants the black suit. And at the end of the book, it's because her son has been killed in the Iraq War, but he was a soldier. And she loved her son very, very much. She had an abusive husband. And so she wants to wear this suit to the cemetery. And there's a lag towards the end of the book. She's not wearing the suit. Everyone loves the suit. She shows them the suit. They're like, and they're thinking, but where's your John Galliano evening dress? I mean, come on. This is red carpet world. And then the book, she goes to the grave and she's wearing it, and people see her out of their windows on a Sunday morning in the suit and a pair of heels, which I also,
Yeah.
I wanted to make an amend to Oscar for some, he did try and punch him once because he had every,
Yeah.
and a lifelong concern about paying respect and making an amendment to Mrs. De Laurenta, and Oscar had died. I mean, it took me forever to write the book. Oscar died.
Right. Right.
And so he's alive in the book, and all these kindnesses that go on.
Yeah.
Like Jesus, I've never talked like this. The kindnesses that were bestowed upon me by strangers,
Yeah.
really loving strangers. And that's what happens in the book. And so people end up crying, like just like the author is right now. But I'm going to make a joke about this because that's how I survived.
So she's every woman that has been in your life. I mean, that's Mrs.
Yeah.
Brown. Yeah.
And then the ladies who
Man,
I
that
knew,
gave me chills. Yeah.
the
She's all
mothers,
those
people
women.
who actually,
Yeah.
Serena, my friend that I talk about a lot. I remember her telling me the story of her mother going in the car from Locust Valley, Long Island, and going to have her wedding dress and her trousseau made by Oscar. Serena had a suit in case someone died.
Right.
Queen of England had a suit in case someone died. If you were the Queen of England, you traveled with your suit in case someone died.
Yeah.
Had to get
Wow.
into that suit. And it was an intervention for Mrs. Brown,
Yeah.
hopefully for her readers as well.
Yeah.
Respect was paid. So when that book came out, which was its own story and
Yeah.
that and the other, but I knew it was okay. I didn't need to be embarrassed about it. I went around
Yeah.
the country promoting it. And I'd stand up in front of groups of, bridge clubs and country clubs. And also with Skype and Zoom, I did a lot of
Yeah.
book clubs, which I love doing because always at the end of those book clubs where there's been alcohol, everyone's really nice about it. And then someone
Yeah.
raises their hand and says, they'll say, Carol, you haven't asked any questions of Mr. Norwich. And she raised it. I really didn't like this book. I loved it. It was great. But really what would happen particularly at the large events, I remember being in Cleveland and I had 300 people and we're talking about Mrs. Brown and I'm feeling like the
Yeah.
greatest thing since the typewriter. And the question always was at the end, yeah, I'm going to read your book, but can you tell us what Anna Wintour's really like? To which I had the answer, yes, I can. It's very brief because it would
Yeah.
always be the end and everyone needed to
Yeah.
go home.
Yeah.
At least the organizers wanted to go home. And I would say, she walks on water in high heels.
Yeah.
I told
I
Diana
love it.
first about that story. That's what led me.
Yeah.
She asked, will you write a memoir? And I said, no, my memory's not that good. And I don't really need to own the narrative. No one cares, Diana. I said, but I do have a title. And she said, what's the title? I said, what's Anna Wintour really like?
That's
If I write a memoir,
genius.
that's what it will be.
So we've heard about everything you've written, but you've also contributed so much as an editor. I think it's interesting to know how someone that has written since the age of 7 can transition into that editor role and the skill set it takes to edit someone else's writing.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm a great editor of other writers' work. A magazine or a newspaper, what I have a gift for is how to restructure and organize a piece. And somehow, for recovering dyslexic, move people's paragraphs around and say, I think that's what you mean. And that's it. But
Right.
always be somebody helping me actually edit text. Because that's how in the old days, everywhere I worked, there was a group. And then I would pass, it's called top editing. And then I pass it along. When I was doing, people are talking about, there was one year at Vogue where I sort of pushed this, but we should do like a special Vogue men. And this goes way
Dang.
back. I feel 1991. Irving Penn, Mr. Penn wanted to photograph Warren Beatty again. So we got Warren Beatty. I believe I either wrote it or he talked to me on the phone. So that's another thing I can do. In
Yeah.
most cases, you can talk to me if you're not a writer, and I can cobble it together and give it back to you to fix, and you will sound like yourself. Those are two distinct skills. And over the years, I've contributed to so many The category is called illustrated books, which to me sounds like you have Arthur Rackham doing drawings. No, but any book that's mostly pictures, so career monographs for these people. I had so many experiences working on those books, and rarely did the author have a good time because it's like a picture book, an illustrated book, a career monograph of images of photography
Right, right.
is like building a house for all your content. But the publisher will not want to do necessarily a 600-page book.
Exactly.
And no one wants to buy and try and carry out of the bookstore in
Oh,
those days a 600-page book.
yeah. Oh, and Billy, I was there for many of those of the
Right.
big three. I helped all the big three on their books, just getting the
Yeah.
blessing from the celebrities.
At Phaidon Press, I did write the introduction to Linda. What is the proper title? Linda Evangelista, photographed by Stephen Meisel. I think it came out about 3 years ago now. And I was honored to write the introduction. But as
Yeah.
the editor, I really just made sure that their experience is good. And in fact, of all the books I ever worked on, I must say, boy, did they know what they wanted. I think Linda and Stephen disagree.
Right.
Linda wanted one and Stephen wanted another, but they came into the project knowing exactly how many pages they wanted for their
Oh,
book.
wow.
Quite an edit came, and then they unexpectedly honored me, because I had been pushing for that book from the day I started at Fudden, because I thought what would be more interesting than a funking coffee table book by any well-known photographer would be just something that could focus in on a key relationship in their career.
Yeah, of course.
And so I always asked for
Yeah,
that.
Mario and Kate. Mario's book, the Kate book.
Exactly. Also
Yeah.
published by
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. I love that book. I
I
have it
know.
here.
And those mean a lot because we live in a world full of images, but very little connection.
Exactly.
So shepherding that through and knowing Stephen had certain requirements and Linda's had certain requirements. And Linda was, she now talks about it. She was not well.
Right.
She was going through it. Man, was she going through it doing that?
In a
And
way, that was probably a very therapeutic experience, too. I'm sure there's some sadness in it, looking at the past, having gone through what she did. She's thriving now and she is ungettable at this point. It
that's,
might as well be the
I,
90s.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But that was Stephen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stephen really put confidence back into her.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are really best friends, their family, and a beautiful,
And
beautiful.
I think it must be really great to have a writer, not just any writer, but someone like you on the other side helping, because you can also understand in this scenario or with a writer, right? You can understand almost like the way you'd have wanted to be spoken to by an editor. It's like when Grace and when Tawny models turned editors, stylists, for people that don't understand another use of editor. But it's knowing, okay, they've been standing for a while, or, that she's wearing fur
Exactly.
and it's 90 degrees. That's where they become these motherly roles. You're like, oh, that must be uncomfortable here, or she's very exposed. And we said this was going to be quick, and we promised to airbrush the nipples, which
Right.
there's a story I will go to my grave with where
Uh,
that did not happen, and no one saw it. So it's still anyone could see it, but if they don't know who it is, it's going to take them a long time to
I
find.
just digress really, really quickly.
Yeah.
I think you can
Yeah.
miss a lot on the
Well,
computer.
that's why it's important to have many different eyes, and it's always important to have young eyes versus only really old need glasses eyes, but
Mm,
also just eyes that might see something that you look over. And that can be a cultural thing, that can be just something you didn't think growing up was a thing, but now it is. Like all of those things, like
absolutely.
something that you just don't see. You don't see. You can look at it a million times and you don't see it.
Before Bill Clegg, the literary agent, sent the current manuscript out, he sent it to a sensitivity reader because we only got to really know each other through he agenting this book.
Right.
And he called me up and he said, I need to tell you something. And I think because he was concerned he was going to tell a man of a certain age and a certain generation that it went out to a sensitivity reader. And it was because there's a lot of balking about that by people my
Oh,
age. Did you know that?
no.
How dare you? I mean, I won't be censored and I won't
Well,
tap out
at least give you a choice that here's the backlash you're going to receive that's going to completely overpower the book.
or
You
get the
know,
book, or in that case, from the agent to a potential publisher, get the book rejected. So it's in everyone's best interest, but
yeah,
will the author agree? And
yeah,
I have to say, since it was my first time, I was like, to quote Dorothy Parker, "Eesh, what fresh hell will this be?" Well, no. How helpful it was to bring the book and the story into now. I have no objection to including a reader so they can keep going. I
right,
don't need to alienate anybody. If they spent the $29 to buy this book, I'm not throwing you out of the book in the middle
right.
because you have issues about incest. And I didn't even know that was potentially a trigger for incest, this little passage in the book. Because for me, it was like it's how you got raised.
Right. It's even things. And it can be as simple too as just references. But listen, digressing even more, with Me Too and all of this stuff, it's hard for my generation, I think, because we're straddling both. So we grew up, especially in our careers, with anything goes, they're your boss.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously,
Oh, yeah.
seriously. And
Oh, yeah.
then we're bosses, and oh, I need a mental health day. It's like, what? I booked a cover while being rolled into foot surgery.
Right.
They had to take the phone out of my hand because Anna wanted me to book Rachel Weisz. It was a November cover, and it
Yep.
didn't matter that they're trying to put the mask over me.
If you ever run into
Uh,
Elizabeth Stewart, you know who I mean?
of course.
Ask her about Amy Spindler on the phone with her. She's going into labor on the thing, and her husband
Oh my God.
grabs the phone and says to Amy, "Stop it. Don't call again." She's 3 minutes from popping.
No, it's true. The only day that I didn't get an email was, I think, Christmas Day. It wasn't weird to me. It was just the way it was, but
How we
it's
work.
weird to everyone. I feel like check, even with like weekends, it's a weird thing with the other generation. I know Google has a rule, no emailing before
Well,
internally before 8 a.m. after 6 p.m. and definitely not on weekends. I'm like, try to tell Anna that's the new. No, that's what happened when I was going on maternity leave. They told me you can't work on maternity leave. I'm like, "Oh, you're telling me, or are you going to tell my boss?" I booked Rihanna's cover holding a 2 week old. It is what it is.
absolutely. I mean, honestly, it depends who's calling.
Right.
Really, I mean, if Anna called me on the weekend for a work-related thing, I was kind of honored. I was thrilled to be
Oh, she was
included.
thinking about you.
She was thinking about me and she was thinking about my work.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back,
Hmm.
Billy, after all the success, Daily News, Post, Vogue, Times, Fight, and Met Gala live streams, you've written, quiet people are the ones you want to love and know. Are you still the outsider looking in, or have you found your place?
I have not found my place, but my age has found a place for me. I think that if this were 10 years ago, we might not be having, they might have invested podcasts 10 years ago. But my point is, I don't know that I would be really veteran enough uh, to be useful. And now I'm an older person. Um, there's so much nostalgia for the 90s. I
Hmm.
was there. The 80s, I was there.
Yeah.
And there's attrition in the world. And so people reach out to me to help, to talk. Um, this is my place. I always describe myself as a graduate of Vogue, an
Yeah.
Vogue alum, as you are, and Vogue emeritus. Um, I don't need to work for Vogue now unless
Right.
God knows they wouldn't be able to pay enough to pay the rent. So if they can't pay the rent,
Oh, yeah,
doing
exactly.
interviews and share my experience, and I get to be
Yeah.
pregnant in nostalgia. In the beginning of DV, which supposedly is not a work of fiction, but an autobiography of Mrs. Vreeland, it begins with the story of uh, something, 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 and Swifty Lazar, again to mention Mr. Lazar, said, the problem with you, babe, is you're nostalgic. She said, so I punched him in the nose. I'm not nostalgic. I'm in the now. So I'm finding myself being really nostalgic. And I told Shelley Wanger, in my walks on water and not
Yeah.
in medium heels. And I said, I just hate it in me. I hate it in me. I'm only 70 years old. I'm so nostalgic. And she said, with that dry voice, well, I mean, how much are you supposed to be? Look at the world today. You know, I spent a lot of nights in the Ritz Hotel, thanks to Vogue and also the New York Times, because the little hustler in me got the New York Times an editorial discount. So staying at the Ritz for a while was competitive with any other hotel you had to go to. So we all
Yeah.
were staying at the Ritz.
Yeah.
But I never thoroughly enjoyed it because I was so terrified that they would decide not to cover my expenses. You know, it would be like another student loan.
Right.
Did I?
Right. But yeah,
Go
I have a couple more of these. Okay. Your mother taught you fashion is intervention. You often quote the fashion designer Pauline Trigger, feeling blue, wear red. And you've written that fashion is the furniture of the mind made visible. So bringing back to
yeah,
after decades in fashion, has this philosophy held true?
I think so. I really, really think so. And the superficiality of the average, and I mean average, because someone like Brian Boy
Yeah.
has gone way beyond
Yeah.
falling
Yeah.
in life. I mean, he really gets this. He
Yeah.
knows too.
Yeah.
There are others. They see.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you look at how fashion is communicated now, well, in my humble opinion, we're just living in a resurrected age of Babel. This is one big towering Babel. There is no truth. There's only opinion. And so the way people regard it is like this sneaker will save my life
Yeah.
reveals how tenuous our grasp of reality is. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah. There's a paradox in your life. Andre Leon Talley taught you about that Herbert's photo. Why do you need to own it? Get the postcard. Yet you painted your foyer the exact same color as a Cartier box, bringing the box to Janovic to match it. You
Hmm.
keep a painting of your mother at 7 with a bow in her hair, one of the few things I have from my childhood home. You preach letting go while surrounding yourself with meaningful objects.
Hmm.
Books, photographs, blue and white. Is that the orphan's paradox? Holding tightly because you know things disappear, but keeping what little remains of the people who vanished?
Hmm.
That's the
Yeah,
question.
yes. Yes, I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I have so many books and things, even in this room, where I'm at Garrett's place in East Quogue, Long Island.
Well, it's the possessions thing. Don't let possessions possess you, but
Right. I
there's
mean,
different
look,
types of
can
possessions.
you see my mother's there?
Oh my God.
Yeah. And can you see those books?
Yes. But
Right.
isn't there something different than possessions and memories? I don't know. I think when you're saying different things at different times, they're not all about the same possessions, right? It,
No, it isn't. When my mother died and she left her possessions to one of three sisters, four girls in the family of seven. And that aunt kept the house for a while and then she sold it. And I was all of 19 years old and I had to go get rid of everything because I didn't know where I was living. I was at Hampshire.
right,
I
right.
was in the dorm room.
I know. Yeah.
And I filled, was it 14 or 16 huge hefty bags with everything I owned and threw it away. Now, years later, I always had a hairbrush. And I remember doing a story for Vogue on John Pawson, the famous minimalist architect. And I was like listening to him about minimalism. But I knew that he also had a whole room in his house for the stuff. I
Right.
knew that wouldn't be an option for me. And I said, I cannot think of anything at this point in my life that I can get rid of. and I'm living in organized clutter. Garrett wants somebody to come in and do a book collecting and intervention, so I stopped buying books. Um, they give me such comfort. They are my value.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Your
read
house,
them
you
all.
said you like sleeping. You have books under the bed.
That
Yeah.
apartment, yeah,
Yeah. And
amazing.
floating on books. I mean, that's beautiful. I think it's about if they are possessing your life. There's a
Right.
difference. It's not that they always are. You do need that
Well,
comfort.
I mean,
Kids sleep with blankies, like isolate,
that's right.
things. There's a security blanket in reading a letter that I got from someone saying beautiful things about me that I need to hear, and I can hear it by opening that box. You know
That's
what I mean?
that's right. Absolutely. I have in the drawer back there my stuffed animals.
Yeah.
They're like Dorian Gray. They look better than I do at this point in time. I'm grayer than they are. After thinking a lot of my conversation with John Paulson, I thought the one thing I could get rid of was my hairbrush because we don't use it. I told him that. He didn't laugh, but it was a great ending for the piece, I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
Vogue living. Which is why I think ostensibly I was brought back to Vogue was to do stuff for Vogue living.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's very interesting you say that. I'll tell you a story. I learned to have to let go or be
Cool.
dragged after 9/11 at the New York Times. Soon thereafter, there was anthrax scares, and
Hmm.
people they were sending anthrax to the Times, and as a result, they would steam your mail to see what was in it,
Right.
make sure there wasn't anthrax. So a cousin of mine sent me a box of family photographs,
No.
and when I got the box, all those black and white pictures, and some would have been in color. They were looked like a pile of what we call matzo brie. Matzo brie is where you take matzah at Passover with egg and you make a mishmash of it. So it looks like melting matzahs. I hope some of your listeners know what matzah looks like. And I looked and I thought, isn't that a metaphor?
Yeah. Oh,
Matzo brie.
yeah.
Yep. So I don't have,
That's okay. In this article, there's two questions about advice. Best advice you ever received, you said don't take everything so personally.
Mhm.
Best advice you've ever given, give time to do its healing. It's been over 50 years. Has time done its healing?
Sometimes, sometimes I have had the thought, I dream at night about the state of the world, believe it or not. They got me. I'm really upset. Yet, because there's a t-shirt from one of the wonderful feminist groups that says, I can't believe I have to go through all this shit again. So I am of an age where we're going through the same shit again.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it. But I ask myself, is there anything I can do? Perhaps there is and there isn't. Sometimes I'll post very seriously about something. I feel very strongly about what's going on in Gaza. It should stop.
Hmm.
But I also am very careful to talk about it because every time I talk about it, I get another piece of information. And perhaps now, if someone asks me what greatest thing I ever heard or could say is takes two to tango, or there are three sides to the truth, his side, her side, and something in between.
Right.
Um, but a few months ago, it looked like I was a month away from being in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk from this back issue. I'm one of the lucky people who was a good candidate for very complex spinal surgery. So for the first time in 15 years, I'm out of pain.
Wow.
And I experienced when I was in the hospital, I always loved going alone to the hospital. We haven't talked about it. I don't want to talk about it, but I've had so much surgery
Oh God.
starting back at Vogue with cancer. I've had strokes. I've had carotid artery surgery. I've had all the knees done, all this stuff. And this is my second upper back surgery. But I wake up in the morning, pain-free, with a man I love, a dog who loves me but hates my career because if I start typing, he'll start barking. And I've never been happier in my life.
Yeah.
Uh, the
Peace.
peace, the micro stresses of New York, when you are I don't know if I was handicapped, but I was too prideful to get a cane or anything. I didn't want to, it's very aging. The whole trick now in my life is don't let the old man in.
Right.
Young, think young, think young. But I'm happier than I've ever been
Yeah.
sometimes.
Okay, so if you could have one magic power, when you were asked this, you said the time shifting ability to have Sunday lunch with the people I love and miss who've gone on ahead. Sunday lunch after all this success. I mean, I'm gonna cry. Is that still what you want most?
Very much, very much. If I could see, as we often had, Patrick again, Liz Smith, other friends, Pilar Velades, Amy, I mean,
Yeah.
hmm, Phil my heart, Lee.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be, not just as a writer, but as someone who chose to compose rather than expose?
Hmm. Well, as Gypsy Rose Lee would say, she was a stripper. She said, let me entertain you. I hope I was entertaining and brought some levity
Yeah.
to the world through the writing. That was always my goal. I really cared more about levity than scoops.
Right.
I love,
Exactly.
although I felt like $1,000,000 when I had a scoop. I had like maybe three in my whole life, but levity, that I
Yeah,
brought levity and some kindness.
for sure. Okay, so the rapid fire. At the end of each episode, I ask the same seven rapid fire questions. It's this or that. And of course, Claude took it upon himself to add an eighth for you.
Oh,
So AM or PM?
I mean favorite, as in favorite time of the day?
Yeah, AM or PM. Yeah.
PM,
Text or talk?
text,
Book or film?
book,
Sweet or spicy?
savory, salty,
Spots or stripes?
neither.
Uber or taxi?
Uber,
Top or bottom? It's not sexual. Phyllis and Grace are tops.
tops,
Morning pages or midnight edits? Care of Claude.
midnight edits. I was up to 3 a.m. last night.
Okay, so in closing, I'm calling it All Shall Be Well. Julian of Norwich wrote, be a gardener, dig a ditch, toil and sweat, and turn the earth upside down. Billy, you've been that gardener. Every column, every novel, they're like those stones you placed on your parents' graves, markers saying, I was here, I witnessed this. You learned from your mother that fashion is intervention, from Edmund that words can wound, from Anna that life can be edited, from Liz that you can be reinvented, and you've taught us that quiet people are the ones to love and know, that cynicism becomes unaffordable, that hope is essential. You learned at 17 that fashion could be medicine. Now at 71, you're still prescribing. Feeling blue, wear red. Lost everyone, find them everywhere. Give time, time. Julian of Norwich wrote, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jill. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It is all that money I spent on shrinkage. I don't remember ever talking like this in that time. And I've just let go. The benefits of this conversation will probably become very aware to me because I talked about it, letting it go. I hope everything I've said will be useful to your listeners, just useful to your listeners and not too embarrassing. And if you hate me for dropping names too heavily, you should be happy I didn't tell you my Ginger Rogers story.
I love it. But I love you so much, and I'm so excited for everyone to hear. Billy, this is your life
It
on
is.
Going Rogue.
I don't know if while we were talking, anyone knew how deep research you did compared to everyone I know who's a noted writer, reporter. Those of us noted reporters would be canned because you have reestablished in this amazing world, including the assist of AI technology, which is mind blowing and in this case, very, very delightful,
Mhm.
favorable. I mean, you have really raised the standards here. and having it be about me, of course, which is my favorite topic, um, but not a favorite topic I've actually really
Mhm.
pursued that much. I mean, still a big deal for me to say something in the first person.
Exactly.
It has been a revelation. Like I've gone from I don't know what man or gal, Jill, you've dragged me through the eye of the needle into some other perspective. I'm sitting here at a most personal level of the luckiest man in the world who had the most successful spinal surgery. Whereas a month after that surgery, if I hadn't had, I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Now I'm walking around in platform Birkenstocks, but that's my story. That, but no, walking around in very groovy orthopedic shoes, but that'll get a lot better. And then also, I'm healed. This is a healing of sorts. Now, I've reflected as a result on my very white privilege that has allowed me to do these things, my extraordinary luck, the gift of having beautiful people around me, the gift of being old enough. Through talking to you, I realized by being old enough, I know who Theda Bara was. I know who Tom Nix was. From silent movie stars, which my mother talked to me about, to today when I'm being read by Al, the AI guy, Jill's AI guy, who, with all due respect to anyone who owns an AI company, either wants to get into her knickers or mine. But nonetheless, I take it. It's been a revelation. And
Amazing.
I'm really happy to be able to get back to work now and keep going,
Awesome.
keep
Yeah,
going, keep going.
I love it.
Okay.
Well, I can't wait to see what you're up to next, and we must get together soon.
Oh, I would love that. Please, 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 please.
And you can find me a man since I am dating Al.
Good. Well, you'll send me his job description.
Exactly.
Please.
Okay, so I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
And Jill,
Yeah. Yeah,
I hope I see you sooner than soon.
you will.
I,
Love
I
you. We'll talk
thank
later.
you. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye. Bye.
bye. Okay, that's our show. Thanks for listening to Going Rogue. And be sure to like and subscribe. Today's show is produced by me and Maddie Rosenberg at Radio Free Rhinecliff with assistance from Maddie Kelly. Special thanks to David Vo for our great graphics and Taras Romanov for our epic theme music. See you next Friday.